Okay, hello everyone. My name is Emma Hoswell, and today I'm joined by Miranda, Lydia, and Brett, some of the artists featured in the Masters of Fine Arts thesis exhibition, This, That, and the Other Thing. It's on view at Urban Arts Space until March 19th. This show exhibits the culminating work of the MFA students from Ohio State University's Department of Art over 3 years. For more information about the show, just visit our website at uas.osu.edu. Okay, so just to start off, can everyone just tell us a little bit about your work and your area of focus in the program? Whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, I can kick it off. Thank you, Emma, and Urban Art Space and everyone there. So I'm Miranda. My pronouns are she, her. I'm obviously a third year in the MFA at OSU, and my area is painting and drawing.
I'll go next. My name is Lydia Smith, and I am also in the painting and drawing area, my third year, and I use she, her pronouns.
And then my name is Brett Taylor. I'm a third year as well in printmaking, and I go by he, they.
So can everyone just go through your research in the program, how it's informed your art, how it's changed it if possible, and its end product?
Yeah, we can, I'll start again. So a little bit about my work. I came into the program, I guess, well, even before then, since I've been more interested in painting and drawing, I've wanted to somehow braid together what I've learned through feminist theory, as well as my own experiences, and then somehow translate that into paintings and drawings. And so I came into the program wanting to make really figurative work, really narrative work, focusing on female identifying bodies that would somehow tell a story through painting and drawing. And I was really interested in specifically critiquing this kind of trend in products that I was seeing as reflecting this kind of like feminism that was like some, on t-shirts or on leggings or on like athletic wear that was like selling feminism back to me. The kind of like, you go get it, girl, on t-shirts or something. And I was like, what is this about? Like, and I was really torn and interested by that because it seemed like feminism maybe, and when I talk about feminism, I know that there's multiple feminisms. And so I want to be cognizant of that in this conversation of non-binary feminist thinkers and women of color thinkers. So there's multiple feminisms, but basically like that this was becoming more mainstream, and it seemed like there was being more pressure put onto female identifying bodies in order to achieve more and more and more and do more and more and more and look better and better. And so my paintings began like reflecting a critique of that capitalist and feminist collaboration that I was seeing. And then throughout the program, it's changed to now become hopefully a little bit more open about, well, how is identity even formed? And what are the cultural influences, patriarchy, heteronormativity, white supremacy, these power structures that are pushing onto bodies, and forming and having these bodies, these individuals decide and stick to straight versus, LGBTQ, or decide on categories. And so now I'm hopefully, I think I'm trusting the paint and the drawing itself to speak to these pressures through abstraction. So using shape and line and color to push the figure apart more. It becomes the body that I'm painting becomes a lot more abstract, and hopefully through certain shapes meeting each other and pushing into the body, or maybe the lines of the body pushing back and seeping back into the environment around it. I'm hopefully my work even questions how identity is like decided, and I really believe in an identity more that's shifting and changing, and always making and deciding on where it falls in any given environment. So my work has become a lot more abstract through this program.
I'm happy to go after Miranda because I think there are some similar through lines in our work. For me, I came into the program working basically narratively, identifying as a non-binary, queer, differently abled individual. I created a lot of works that stem from my own experience. And it was through kind of an interdisciplinary study of queer theory, women and gender studies, disability studies, that I started to move the work away from my own body and allow for kind of a spectrum of possibilities. So typically engaging with post-structural frameworks such as queer theory or crypt theory. So similar to Miranda, right? The body and its construction exists on these spectrums. So it's not one or the other. It's like, it's not static. It's constantly moving and shifting and changing. And kind of how the body meets the world. And so I often do this now in kind of pushing back at the frameworks of printmaking as well, and other kind of multidisciplinary collage-based making, in that I take publications that defined what that kind of standard was, or set up that binary. So like, what is the ideal male figure and what is the male form supposed to be? These kind of things were implicated onto my own body, and I remove the figure and then abstract and play with the margins so that you kind of realize this interchangeable relationship of how the body reacts and changes, becomes the space, adapts to the space, overcomes the space. And there's a slippage now. So the body is not always at the forefront. The space, it really does kind of just come down to that through line of like, how is the body meeting the world, and why do we address the body and not the space? So it has become way more theoretical and a lot more broad and open to allow for multiple authorships throughout going through the department and program.
Okay, well, you two are dealing with like the presence of a body being lived in. My work has really consistently been thinking about the absence of bodies, and where is that found, and where is the ghost of something that has been left. So I look at that through place. Although I am not like dealing with a lived body, I'm dealing with the leftover or the remains of a body. And so I entered the program with carrying this like wealth of experience with me around visiting grave cemeteries, burial sites, and places of burial of bodies, or even like the idea of the burial of a body where it does not exist. And the question for me has been, what is the form of this work, and how do I share this experience that I've lived through in my own walking and seeing and feeling of these places that represent this into something that I can then give to someone else or raise questions with someone else. So I started off entering the program with thinking a lot about mapping, and I've evolved and shifted through different forms. Like, although I'm in the drawing and painting area, I've worked with performance, and I've worked with photography, experiments with lots of different materials, always trying to push what can be felt in different forms. And also using those forms to comment on different things, like mapping was early. I began to think about the colonial implications of claiming boundaries on space, claiming even like naming a space and drawing a line through a space and what that means. Marking something that then is supposed to be permanent, can it shift? and then to now working with a book form that I am still shifting through and thinking through. But the one thing about the book form that I'm really excited about is that it can shift hands and it doesn't have to be in the gallery. And so one of the questions I've had also is, what is the site of the work? Where is the work found? And honestly, the work is found in the fields outside of the place for me. And that's something that I've also been thinking about. So where can there be multiple locations for a work? And I think there can, and that's something I'm still going to work through, hopefully.
Amazing. Yes, we did intentionally pair you guys all together because of you're dealing with the body, the ideas around it, the presence of it, the not presence of it. That was definitely intentional, and it's so wonderful to hear you all come together and talk about it in one space. And it's also wonderful to hear your journey from start to beginning. I mean, the 3 years you all have been through. I mean, especially during COVID and everything, obviously. But as an artist, during a time of heightened anxiety, urgency, uncertainty, I'm sure that you've faced numerous challenges. Has there been a shift in the way that you create or think about your art in the past 3 years?
I don't mind answering this one first. For me, being in such like a material-based discipline, so something that's super tactile and depends on a space when I first entered the program, to me, because of this kind of time of uncertainty and safety and like looking out for a community, my process was largely decentralized. So I quickly realized that my studio is where I'm at. And that you kind of adapt the ways you're making to the spaces that you're residing and how much that does actually inform the way we make work. So for me, unfortunately, I couldn't exactly go deeper into the kind of tactile way of making, so I went broader. And it definitely expanded the way I viewed kind of my creative practice to take a multiplicity of different forms. And I'm realizing now that there's a self-seriality in the work. Like a previous work will then reference another one. And there's this kind of cataloging of things that happens. But just kind of thinking about how I no longer depend on like a certain space or an institution, right? And the way we share information has changed greatly. And the way we form community, especially creative community, has changed greatly as well, because we can access all of these people virtually. And I think we've started to also bridge, or at least for myself, the space for me that I work in is where there's no longer words for the body. And so this kind of setting, because we've been distant from one another or not able to like touch something or see something or be in the space, has started to bridge that language gap. So how do you express something in words that you might have expressed in art before? And so there's this merging, there's this learning and unlearning that's constantly happening now.
I can go next. So my work is about death, and with the pandemic, looking at these images of these places that I could visit that are abroad or involve travel and happened before the pandemic, chronicling all the lives that have passed before this moment, then when we're all experiencing and witnessing this communal experience of loss and mourning in multiple ways, and it's more heightened in our senses, has been really interesting to me. And I think I've clung on to that in a different way. And then also thinking about accessibility to the work as well. So for our second year show together, we were already thinking about how to make a companion show be online, and how to have not only something that is experienced in a place on site specific, but then also can have a virtual space. And I had friends that were able to look at that show in like other cities and experience that during that time. And then also now with the book that I'm making for my show, for this thesis show, it's also something that I hope to then have distributed to multiple places as well. So there's an accessibility thing that is become, I think, a condition also of the pandemic.
And for me, I think that this time, because everyone has been affected so strongly with strong changes in our daily lives, that it has really made me believe and lean more on the idea of change as itself worthy of an artistic pursuit. that mapping out and sussing out with others and talking with others and figuring out how we've changed and what we're learning and what we find that we have to learn again and again and again, whether it's through, decolonization, circling back to conversations about white supremacy in the United States, to accessibility to healthcare, and just to the ways that we've changed our habits and daily lives and how that actually affects us and how we place ourselves through our identity. That itself is worthy of thinking through in the studio and outside. And also that collaboration, like I was lucky enough to do a few collaborations during my time here and even during the pandemic. So me and two other artists, Hannah Parrott and Kristen Phipps, traded off paintings with each other and worked on each other's paintings. And I learned so much from that collaboration. And even if we couldn't be in the same room doing that together, it has shown me that I want to pursue collaboration, and also as Brett and Lydia have also mentioned, expanding the what is worthy of spending our time doing, and expanding that out into conversations with friends or helping each other out. Just kind of showing more of a emphasis on care of each other has been more of an emphasis for me now.
It's really enlightening and almost hopeful to hear how you've all taken these slightly unfortunate circumstances and been able to broaden your ideas, expand into the art world more in ways that you didn't know were possible or you didn't know before. I mean, you're all constantly exploring new ideas and exploring the boundaries of art. And that sort of leads to my next question about your process and how that may change in the future beyond your academic setting.
I think just being open. I think what I have learned from the 3 years is really a process-oriented kind of way of working that allows for new possibilities in the work. And so going forward, it's kind of hard to think ahead after that we're still putting together this work and there's still some place to go. But I think just trusting the process that we're all engaging with and knowing that it'll evolve and that that what is coming ahead is not actually known, and that's actually a wonderful thing.
Yeah, to kind of just piggyback on that, I think when I came into the program specifically before all of this, I was always looking for an answer. And then the world kind of shifted completely, and I realized that really it's not always about finding an answer, right? It's about asking a question and being open to the questions that come into your day-to-day. And how do you meet those questions? And what forms do those questions start to take? And like I said before, I think it taught me a lot about decentralizing my practice. Like my practice lives within me now, right? Like I don't think we focus enough on the kind of conceptual and physical labor that goes into the theory and the thinking and all this stuff that's not seen, right? And the work is just kind of residue of all the kind of conceptual backing that and all the time and space we've given to these ideas. And I think sometimes allowing ourselves to slow down and take more time and careful consideration, especially in the time of COVID and with all these world changes, to really question what we're doing and stay true to that purpose.
Yeah, I think I want to keep seeing like how much I can trust the viewer, like that I am beginning to become less and less narrative in my work necessarily, or maybe trying to pursue some linear narrative, and that I want to keep believing in kind of like a more poetic or unknown narrative or interpretation that the viewer can pick up on through repetition of shapes or repetition of line or color, you know, across a series that that could come closer to or evoke a feeling closer to what I want to evoke, rather than like hitting them over the head with it. So, and also in my writing too, in the show, I have a takeaway for visitors to have that has some of my more poetic writing, and just a belief that putting that out into the world is worthy, and that people can pick up on what I'm trying to put down.
Yeah, I mean, that's the wonderful thing about art. I mean, it can push the artist in so many directions and the viewer. I mean, it's a relationship, and I think it's really interesting that you point that out. And all the directions that you guys are thinking of taking in the future. I mean, I think it's important that we pointed out that, I mean, nothing is really certain, and you can't really like have an idea in your head of the specific future because you don't know what's going to happen. And that kind of leads into like the future of specifically the Columbus art scene. Is there anything that really excites you all about the Columbus art scene, or the future, or even just the present right now?
I'm excited about Dream Clinic. That's a project run by Hannah Parrott and Morgan Rosefree and Corey Mahoney and Brittany Wainwright, who, you know, have some attachments to OSU. And yeah, I mean, their space, you know, they founded it a year and a half or something ago, and it's in a garage, and they have shows there, and they also have studios there, and spaces like that I think are possible in Columbus, because for now the rent is reasonable, and I think that there's a lot of energy for artist rent spaces here. So I'm excited for more spaces like that to pop up and for that to keep thriving.
I was going to say the same thing, Miranda, especially coming from Philadelphia, where I'm a part of an artist collective there, and it has a long kind of more institutional history around artist collectives being in Philadelphia. And so I come from that kind of space of knowledge and community, and then coming to Columbus and seeing that there's endless possibility for places to build. And I think the networks of community that are here already around different people being very helpful, and I think there's no competition around. There's more of an ethic of strengthening each other in that type of possibility. And I think that's something to continue to build and maintain. So that's something that really excites me about Columbus.
I think we're all on the same page here. For me, I'll just add that, like what Lydia was just kind of saying there at the end, there really is a culture of care, like under this kind of higher gallery system that kind of dominates like the Short North area or the larger kind of art scene in Columbus. There is a more lateral art scene underneath that, where we all kind of support one another, and we're all there to offer advice and workspace and collaboration. And the art world here truly does run on generosity like everywhere else. And so allowing and making opportunities with our peers is just going to bring us all forth. And that's really a wonderful kind of wave that I've seen grow as we've been here for 3 years.
Yes, I'm so glad you guys pointed that out. I mean, community is so important, especially for artists. And hopefully we'll see more things like the Dream Clinic pop up and more artist communities supporting each other. I think Columbus is really on the rise, and I think the art community is just flourishing right now, even through COVID. So to sort of end the interview, is there anything that you would like to add, any parting words, any future advice for students of the Graduate of Fine Arts?
I'll say something. I would say I am so indebted to the two people who are here on the Zoom call with me, and I really appreciate them. And I think that's one thing to say to future grads is like, the peers around you are also your biggest resource and your biggest learning space, and also your biggest champions in your work. And you also can be that for them. And I think there's that when you leave the program or when you go out into the world, that also will be there. So making space for that. So Brett and Miranda, I'm thankful for both of you. And take a moment to pause along the way too, and like acknowledge. I think that's the way I've been able to see that, is taking a breath every once in a while and just being like, here I am with these people and this is good.
Yeah, I have a similar piece of advice as well. I think be kind to yourself. I think nobody knew what we were going to all go through together over the course of these 3 years, and meet your peers where they're at, meet yourself where you're at, because there's a lot of learning and growth that can happen, but you have to acknowledge where to begin. And that can really be anywhere. And like Lydia says, your peers are your greatest resource. As we go out into the world, I know I will continue to connect with these wonderful individuals in our MFA cohort. And the other thing I would say about grad school is you have to work with quite a lot of haste. Quite a lot of times, like you expect that change to come. It will. Be patient with yourself, and realize that a lot of these ideas and questions will continue beyond graduate school. Like you're not here to make the thing. The growth is more important than the end result.
Yeah, ditto. Yeah, and do your best, have fun if you can, and find faculty who like get you and support you, and find your peers who do the same and give back to them. And hard crits are good. If you're having easy crits, don't rest on that. Explore, and I don't know, invest in your peers. That's the best advice.
Thank you so much, everyone. That's wonderful advice. I think even for people in general, not even in the graduate program, but thank you so much for all answering our questions. It was so great talking to you. If anyone has more questions about their exhibit or wants to go see it, just visit our website. And again, it's through March 19th. So everyone go visit this amazing exhibition.